Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 21 of Logicast, the AWS News Podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined today, as always, by my colleague, co-presenter and permanent guest, John, as always. Goodall. How are you doing today, John?
You missed the job title in it. You missed the job title.
Does it have to be in there every week? You know, regular
I don't
listeners
know.
will know that you are lead cloud engineer. So there we go. I've got the job title's now
Got
in.
it in there now.
Yeah. I nearly fluffed up my intro then as well, completely. And as you know, we don't start again when that happens. But yeah.
No, we're consummate professionals and we just barrel through.
Just plow on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I'm feeling very poor right now because my telly broke over the weekend. So I've had to buy a new one. So I'm very, very poor. Although you have the DIY tales this time, don't you?
I have been doing various bits of DIY recently. Yes, bit of plumbing actually. It's my first talking about plumbing on the podcast. It's usually you doing plumbing, but I called it Project Sinkhole because I basically punched a 6-inch hole in my ensuite bathroom sink last week with a glass thing falling out of the cupboard. So obviously that needed replacing. So yeah, tried my hand at a bit of plumbing, and so far so good. I don't seem to have any leaks, and nice new sink fitted. So yeah.
I kind of know my boundaries now because I've tried to delve into stuff like electrical work. I can change a switch, I can do little bits. Then I went a step further and I was like, nope, I'm going to step right back, call the electrician. I'm like, not doing that again.
It's usually when you get the electric shock that you make that decision.
Oh, it did happen. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
When you get the shock, it's like, yeah, that's not for me.
My father-in-law did that. And my partner wanted something on the wall, and she said exactly where she wanted it, and she walked out the room. He started doing it. As soon as he started doing it, the whole power went out. He went all rigid, and then he got annoyed at me because he said that I wanted it in that particular spot. I was like, that weren't me, it's your daughter. It's your daughter. She's right there. She's laughing. They're sick. My wife and her mum, they just laugh at people in pain, but there we go.
Well, there doesn't tend to be too much pain with plumbing, but it can be painful when it's leaking everywhere. And but thankfully, that didn't happen on this occasion. So we are watertight. Anyway, I should also introduce our special guest for this week, Ihan Setirekli, fellow AWS community builder. Ihan, how are you doing today, Ihan?
Yes, yeah, all good. Yeah, excited to be on. Yeah, you got my name right. And before this show, you were like, yeah, this is your name. I was like, wow, I didn't have to go through that. Brilliant.
Well, we actually got a tip which I've failed to implement thus far, but I got invited onto another podcast, and on their sign-up form, they have a place where you can upload a recording of the pronunciation of your name. Because often I have to ask our guests, and yours, Ihan, is one of the easier ones. We've had some that I've really struggled with. Particularly Arabic names with rolled R's in the middle of them and that kind of thing. The sounds that we generally don't make in the English language. I think we need to update our guest sign-up form to include a recording of the guest pronouncing their own name, so we don't have that awkward conversation about how to pronounce the name. Ihan, your name is much easier to pronounce than other guests that we've had before. But tell us a bit about yourself. What do you do for a living? What do you do for the AWS community?
Yeah, so I'm a DevOps engineer. I kind of started off in by accident, really, in the cloud. I started off as a maths degree. Went up to Loughborough, did a maths degree because my parents wanted me to be a maths teacher because they thought all the money was in teaching. Okay.
Well, it's all relative, I guess. It depends what you're doing. If you think there's money in teaching, but
yeah. So in that and in doing that, there was some programming courses within that, and then I figured out I wanted to do some software engineering stuff. So I started. I had to do a master's to get that experience because I couldn't get a job. And then I went into another role, which was kind of Linux server-based stuff. And then I went into kind of my first a cloud-based role, which is back in 2018. And then that's in AWS, and I've been doing that ever since. And just fell in love with it, and just continued doing certs, continue learning. And over the last year, AWS community builder as well, so I'm trying to get more involved in stuff like this and face to face. And I saw you guys a month ago at the other meetup in London, and looking forward to seeing John's presentation next week as well on this workflow. Wow, yeah.
So what's next? What's next for you then? What's on the roadmap? You're doing a podcast right now. You've done a user group presentation. What are you aspiring to from a community perspective?
I think I want to do 1 or 2 more kind of blogs this year, if I can. I've got a lot of help from guys since doing that, and getting involved with Sessionize and applying for things there. I've applied ages ago. I got accepted for 2, and then something came up and it was like my wife's hospital appointment and this and that, and I couldn't do it, and I was like, oh gosh. And there was one that I really wanted to do, but I couldn't do it. But I've applied for quite a few this year, but we'll see what happens. But yeah.
Well, good luck with that. It seems you're certainly on a trajectory, so it'd be interesting to see what future engagements pop up. But so as regular listeners to the podcast will know, we're not here to talk about plumbing, electrics, or our various different community engagements. We are here to talk about AWS news. Once a week, I curate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And then John picks a selection of articles that we'd like to talk about with our guests. So we have, of course, shared such a selection of articles with iHand before the weekend. First of those articles is a feature announcement for EC2. The title is Announcing Customer-Initiated Reboot Migrations for EC2 Scheduled Events. Bit of a mouthful, but John, what got you excited about this one?
Excited is probably the wrong word. Let's be honest here. Let's be honest. I don't stay up at night thinking, oh, that's really wrong term. But this is interesting because it's sort of existed already, but sort of not. And it's just kind of made a slightly nasty process quite a lot easier. So if you're unfamiliar, if you're following the sort of the ephemeral server concept, you'll have never come across this, right? Because your servers don't live long enough for instance migration notifications to come to you. But if you have long-lived servers, one, you're doing the cloud wrong, but fine, you've got a long-lived server. Every once in a while, AWS will need to do some sort of maintenance on the hypervisor, the underlying host, networking, sort of whatever, right? And they give you plenty of warning that they're going to do this. And they tell you, well, we will force the instance down and probably bring it back up again, I think, on this date at this time or within this kind of couple of hour window. And if you've got EC2 maintenance windows, I think it is, set, then they'll do it in your maintenance window. And if not, they just kind of give you a time. But if you wanted to do it yourself ahead of time, you could do that, but you had to stop the instance and then start it again. And that worked. Okay, fine. But it was a manual in the console. You couldn't do reboot. You had to go stop, wait for it to stop, start, wait for it to start, and then it would be kind of done. And that worked, and that was okay, but it was a bit painful because you had to sit there and watch it. And more than half the time, I think, you had to force the instance to stop because it would be stopping for so bleeding long because of whatever reason they need to do the maintenance, presumably. So you had to sit there as, well, that's not stopped, force stop, that's still not stopped, force stop, force stop, and then it would eventually do it, and then you could bring it up again. Yeah. This solves for that effectively because you just say reboot. Oh, what type is it? Oh, it's a migration. Bink. Ah, cool. We'll do that and we'll deal with it for you. And you can just sort of set and forget, which is much nicer. It's something that we need to do occasionally. And if you're doing lots of these things, you really need to think about re-architecting your system, let's be honest. But it's making something that's a little bit nasty quite a lot nicer.
What are your thoughts on this one, Ihan? It's a problem you've had? You've been furiously hitting the stop button.
Yeah, I mean, in where I work, we've got a lot of customers on support, and we do receive these emails saying, "Okay, this is a pending thing that you have to do." But I kind of understood this differently, really. So is this giving you some sort of schedule window that you can do, or is this saying that you can hit the reboot and then it works? Because I thought. My initial thought was, I thought it already did that. So yeah.
The reboot in the console as it stands is a soft reboot, as it were. So it's just rebooting the VM. It's not doing anything on the hypervisor. It's not doing any of that. No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good. I can't add anything to what John said. It's good to have. Yeah.
No worries. Well, let's move along to our second article for this week. This is an article from the AWS News blog all about Amazon Inspector, which the title is Amazon Inspector Enhances Container Security by Mapping Amazon ECR Images to Running Containers. So security, always a hot topic. Containers, obviously a popular modernization path away from EC2. John, thoughts on this one?
Well, yeah, popular modernization path, and AWS love to sort of tout app to container and those sorts of tools because they say, oh, containerization, that's a low effort modernization practice. No, it isn't. Not necessarily. No, it isn't. It could be incredibly painful depending on what you're trying to do, right? App to container just sort of goes, shove. And that works sometimes and it doesn't always. So let's just put a pin in my little aggravation with that effort estimate for the minute. So, Inspector, what does Inspector do? So for the uninitiated, Inspector scans running instances, container images, a few other things for vulnerabilities. These link back to CVEs, and they might eventually link back to the EU vulnerability database listing as well. But for the minute, it's, you've got these CVEs, these are active, these are, what the numbers are and what the problems are, and if there's any mitigations and what patches and stuff solve for that. People are probably quite used to using that for EC2 instances because you put the SSM agent on, you enable Inspector, and you're away, right? It works really well. And it works really well for container images as well because you would configure it to scan on push. So you push something up to ECR and Inspector scans that, tells you, oh, you've got this, issue in your image in these layers, and you should probably look at resolving that by doing it like this instead. Cool, wonderful. However, that was all it kind of did. It went, well, this container image and this version of this container image has got these problems in it. Great. That's useful. That's great to know, but you kind of had to know where that was running. And in smaller states like we deal with for the SMB kind of customer base, there's not really a problem because how many container images are they really running? Dozen tops. Like, it's not a huge number. When you start looking at enterprise, or even, to be honest, the M's in the SMBs, or people that are heavily into containers and they've got lots of workloads running in containers and in ECS and in EKS and kind of all the rest of it, then it could start to be quite problematic because you've got lots of different versions of the same container image. Potentially you've got lots of different container images, and so that one's running over, that one's running over, and you turn into that meme of the bloke with the images and the string between them and just losing his mind, just trying to map everything together. So now ECR and Inspector is doing that for you. So it's hard not to like this. And we should all care more about security anyway. So this is just, go use it.
What are your thoughts, Ihan? I know your talk that we saw was about security, not specifically about this. I think it was about guard duty, wasn't it? And S3, but obviously security is a focus of yours. What are your thoughts on this?
It just shouts out visibility, right? I liked that you can also, because I know I've seen the practice of certain people use specific accounts for their golden images. That's quite nice in a way where you can see these images, these are the ones used by a company, this is where it's being used. It just helps so much if you want to update that image, you know exactly who's using it, who to contact about the account. I kind of had a similar thing when we're working with GitHub workflows that are shared, and you kind of, they added a similar feature to say, okay, these are the repositories that are using it and when it was run. So yeah, it's a really nice feature to have. Just like, increases visibility to and it's nice because it tells you the ARN as well for the ECS cluster, or the ECS task, or the EKS pod, which is quite nice. So yeah, it's really good, and it's no additional cost as well if you've already got Inspector enabled, that is, because Inspector comes at an additional cost, I think, when you're enabling it.
Yeah, how does Inspector work from a cost perspective, actually? I don't know that off the top of my head. Do you know that, John?
It depends on what it's doing, obviously, because Inspector has 3 or 4 different lenses, if you like. So EC2 scanning, you pay per instance, as you'd sort of expect. It can do CIS benchmarking, and that's per assessment per instance. For ECR scanning, it's number of container images scanned initially on push, and then there's a separate charge, quite a lot lower, for rescans, because it's continuous scanning, right? So the first image you ever push, you will pay quite a lot more for. You'll pay, I think it's 9 cents per image. And then rescans are, well, I've updated this image. It's slightly different. I've got updated dependencies or whatever. So your rescan is quite a bit cheaper. And that comes under continuous scanning. And then there's other bits and pieces as well for Lambda scanning, which is per function, Lambda code scanning, which is per function, but more because it's looking at, more in depth. And then there's another one for baking it into a CI/CD process, which costs 3p, which is, so it's not horrifically expensive. Generally, it's something that you should be using. And in the ECR kind of world, in what we're talking about here, it's if you're not pushing vast amounts and you're not using huge numbers of images, you're probably not going to see the bill. It's going to be pence. It's going to be a few dollars maybe. So absolutely go and use it.
And what about the whole cloud native tools versus external tools? I know we've certainly had conversations with customers where things have been picked up by external tools that have not been picked up by cloud native tools. What should people be doing there? What would make you decide to use Inspector versus the third-party scanning tool? Do you think?
It's an interesting one for me. It's a good question because in some cases, and we've seen that more in EC2s, I think, than container images, because Inspector, as far as I know, will back into some sort of third-party toolset anyway. I don't know what one it's using, but it will back into a third-party toolset because AWS have far too many services to be building their own everything, when in truth, they're just repackaging quite a lot. For me, it'd be cost and convenience, because Inspector's just there. Just turn it on and use it, and it's better than not having anything. Right. If you really, really, really must catch every single security flaw and bug and all the rest of it, then you need to be looking at scanning things multiple times, and then that can get quite expensive. I mean, I'm a big fan of SonarQube, and I've been on record as saying that I like SonarQube. It doesn't quite do the same thing, but it'll do code scanning and what have you, and that's quite nice. And there's loads of other tools kind of on the market that will either cost you money or not. But yeah, I mean, I'd pick Inspector because it's there and it's cheap.
Yeah.
Now you're on record again saying that you like SonarQube. Anything to add, Ihan, on that?
Yeah, it's just that it's baked in. It's just easy to turn on. And as John said, a lot of these things are kind of backed by other things. As you mentioned, the guard duty malware protection, which is AWS's virus scanning solution that uses Bitdefender in the back end, which is like, that's funny. So I wonder what this is using in the back end. I haven't checked that out, but probably one of the bigger tools. But yeah.
Cool. All right. On that note, let's move along to our third article for this week. And this is all about the introduction of the new AWS Product Lifecycle page and AWS service availability updates. So AWS generally have not been big on deprecating services, but we have seen a bit of an acceleration recently of services being deprecated, and perhaps coming a little bit out of the blue as a little bit of surprise to customers and the community. So I guess this is a reaction to feedback that AWS have had, but they've started listing now on the AWS Product Lifecycle page services that are being deprecated and when. And we can talk about some of the services which are listed on that page. But what are your thoughts on this one, Ihan? Good development?
Definitely, yeah. I think they got a big backlash when they I think it was about a year ago now, they deprecated code commit along with a couple of other things. And I think it was like Jeff Barr was like, I couldn't find the LinkedIn post, but he definitely did a Twitter X post. And from that, someone was like, okay, yeah, where's the communications for this? In the post, he was really cryptic about which services as well. It was like code commit and some other services, but there's no page or anything to look at this. So it sounds like they've listened since then. It looks really nice. They have a centralized page for it. It links in with, so if you go to any of the documentation for the deprecated services, it's on all the pages at the top bit of the page, so you can't miss it really. So that's quite nice. I always find these bits interesting because there's like 3 tranches to it, isn't it? It's like a end of support, and so that's like end of support announce, which is upcoming, end of support reach, and there's like closing access to new customers. And that one interests me, so I'm thinking, I think just got like if else statements in the back end, just like looking at account IDs, because it's like code commit. If you're already using it, you can still use it, you can still create it, but if you have a new account, then you can't create it anymore.
Code commit was a funny one for that, because it was, if you're already using code commit, you can keep using it. If you're not using code commit, then you can't create any new repos. But if you use it in another account in the same organization, then you can create it in another account, but you had to ask permission to do it. I think they might have closed that now as well.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if you could just raise something to say, put my account ID in the if else statement that you got in the back end.
Well, it's not listed in any of these categories here, so I assume it's completely gone now, has it?
No, code commit's in here.
Oh, is it?
You have to. If you scroll down, there's the resources, and then there's the filter, and it is in there actually.
Oh, okay. I was just looking in the higher level categories at the top. So so any other services on here that surprised you, Ihan?
What we got here? We got TimeStream Live Analytics. I don't think I've ever used that. I think I've used IoT quite a bit with IoT event rules, but it doesn't look like that affects that. So analytics and events. I had a look at those two, and the migration plan that they provide within each of it as well. Actually, that's good to mention. Any of the ones that are deprecated, they show you a plan to move to other AWS services or other services provided, and how you do that, which is quite nice. They did not do that before. But yeah, for those ones in particular, some of them are kind of like soft migration. So you can just like move over to use like an AWS, another AWS service, which is quite nice. So yeah, that's the one that interested me, I think. What about you, John?
I mean, I read through kind of the list of the new ones, because they announced this page and then they announced a bunch of services going on at the same time, which is all right, fine. Read through it and just went, does anyone actually use any of these anyway? Okay, I can see why you're trying to kill it. TimeStream for live analytics, I've never used it, but then we don't do a lot with time series data. Pinpoint, okay, end user messaging, but they've kind of broken half of that service out, put it somewhere else, and then they're killing a very specific part. That's fine. IQ, I don't think that ever got massive adoption. I tried to sign up to it quite recently, did manage to get in.
We both just signed up to it, and once we signed up to it, thought, seems to be an awful lot of rubbish in here. and then it announced it was being deprecated. So there we go. I guess AWS thinks the same.
I don't ever think they've got any great traction with it, because it's one of those, you already have to have had an AWS account in order to then ask for help to do things in AWS. Okay, fine. The IoT stuff, I'm not in the IoT space. Inspector Classic just needs to die, to be really honest, because that just needs to die.
Especially if it's got classic in the name.
Yeah.
It just needs to go away.
Yeah, so no, there's nothing in there that bothers me particularly. There's nothing in there that I think are being used hugely. It's quite interesting though, generally, because it does mark a bit of a culture shift from AWS more generally, in that allegedly it's incredibly hard to kill services off within AWS, and they have to take a very long time to do it, and so on and so on. Whereas Google will just kill stuff left, right, and center because it's Tuesday. But they'll just get rid of it because they just don't like it anymore. But it marks a bit of a culture shift, I think. I don't know how much we're going to see of this, but AWS have had this history, this very long history of running things long past the point where anybody really cared about them. Or, they might have had a few customers on there and they just wanted to maintain support for them. But I do wonder if we're going to see more and more cancellations now, given that we've got this sort of resource.
Well, watch this space. Watch this page, literally, because that's where you're going to find out.
I think an RSS feed is coming. I think a feed is coming.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. Or I don't know. They don't really use it as much. The AWS notifications within the console, and you can sign up to stuff. It's not in there either. I did check that, but yeah, maybe integration into there or RSS might be nice.
Yeah, future iteration of the product. I guess this is the MVP, but it's good to have. So on that note, let's move along to our fourth article for this week. This is an article on the Cloud Wars site, all about a report that's been published by AWS on how generative AI spending is overtaking security spending in some organizations. So quite an interesting one. What are your thoughts on this, John?
This bothers me. This bothers me. I'm not anti-AI. I used to be. I'm not anymore. I've kind of, as our good friend Brian likes to say, I've waterboarded this particular Kool-Aid. So I'm all in on this now. But this bothers me, and I can't quite put my finger on why it bothers me, but it does. I think I get the vibe that just companies only have a finite pot of money, right? If you've got 100 grand to spend for the year, just because this new shiny tool has come along doesn't mean you've magically got more money. So I get the feeling, and it's just a feeling, that GenAI is being put ahead of security in terms of priorities, and therefore this is why the spend is kind of swinging a little bit. People don't care enough about security generally, and GenAI is still this kind of, it's not vaporware, it's here to stay, right? But it's the new shiny that everyone seems to want. And the irony is, some of the things that we're seeing coming out of GenAI tools, particularly from the vibe coders of the world, are horrifically insecure. So this bothers me, but it's one of those time will tell, I think. What's quite interesting, though, is if you look at the numbers, it says 45% of companies surveyed indicated GenAI was their top budget priority. Okay, so for 55%, it's not. So the world still has some sanity, I think.
I did notice the new C-level job title in here, the Chief AI Officer. I'm not sure how you actually say that. Is it the CAIO or the CIO or the
cowl?
The EIO? I don't know. I need to hear that spoken by someone else that isn't me. But yeah.
I hadn't heard the C-suite before. They call it the C-suite.
Yeah. C-suite is the C-suite is growing. You got your CEO, your CTO, your CIO, your CAIO. I don't know if I can say them all.
Hang on, you've got the CEO, COO, CTO, CISO, the CISO, the CFO,
CPO,
product, CMO.
Yeah, it's quite a big suite now. So
there's cloud engineer coming to that. CE.
Well, yeah, it's got a C in it, but he's not in the suite. So
no, he's definitely not the suite.
Yeah, but what are your thoughts on this, Ihan? Are you seeing this? Do you think there's much truth behind this?
Yeah, I think I'm in the consultancy world, so there's a lot more customers. This is like, these projects are coming up a lot more. GenAI projects, especially the MVP stuff, they want a lot of MVPs to prove something, and then they want to go into that. We just did one actually with a financial services company for their their call out center. So that was quite interesting to use one of their tools. But yeah, I think the same thing that John, along the same lines as John, it's like, okay, you're giving more money to this finite pot of money, giving more money to GenAI, but security is getting less and less. But GenAI is also increasing the issues with security and insecurity. So it's like you're going to add more factors to it to make it more dangerous, but you're also got less money to give it. So, and we're seeing a lot more. I don't know if you guys today with the news, like Adidas got cybersecurity, they got hacked, or every week there's a different major company being hacked to get cybersecurity. So yeah, it's a bit of a worry, but yeah, like John said, time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think it did mention the fact that it's not necessarily the trend in smaller businesses, perhaps because they're lagging behind a bit in terms of the generative AI adoption. That those guys are still looking to spend more on security than Gen AI. But you're right, Ihan, it's introducing new risks into the business. Security spending is all about reducing risk, and I guess AI spending is about taking some risk to drive the business forward. So it's making sure that the budgets are balanced appropriately, so that in introducing new risks, you make sure that they're mitigated with tooling and so on and so forth. So
I think as well with this, if I was a smaller company, I think let's let these bigger companies start doing this. A big mistake's going to come out. Let's let them make the mistake, and then maybe we'll pick it up later on. It's like what Apple does with phone features. Let the Android community build it up. Okay, that's popular. Let's pull that into the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just stand on the sidelines and let someone else make the mistakes. Absolutely. Yeah. Good point. Cool. Well, let's move on to our final article for this week. So staying with the topic of security, this is an article on SC Media. The title is Widespread Cloud Storage Bucket Misconfiguration Exposes 200 billion files. That's a big number. This one's not specifically about AWS, although we do regularly talk about leaky S3 buckets on the podcast. This, I think, is across multiple cloud vendors, all having leaky buckets. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this one, John? 200 billion files? That sounds like quite a lot.
I mean, yeah, but how many small files do you put in an S3 bucket that are just log files or whatever? Yeah. The article's quite light on detail because it's just kind of linking to another one that is, again, kind of pretty light. But yeah, 660,000 misconfigured buckets leaking 200 billion with a B, files. That's okay. I thought we'd gotten away from this, but then I don't know. Rise of the Vibe Coders, and it's coming back round again. It sounds like a horror movie, like a horror sci-fi film, doesn't it? It's Rise of the Vibe Coder. Oh god, that's not great. This bothers me. This bothers me because I mean we talk about this at every opportunity because we don't necessarily exclusively speak to experts in the field, but we should know better as a community by this point. I feel we should know better. And that's not to say that the people making the mistakes are at fault here. I mean, yes, they are technically at fault. They made the mistake, but as a community and as sets of providers as well, it's not just AWS because Google and Microsoft and all the rest of it will be equally culpable. Is everybody needs to be doing more to help people get this right. Because AWS have made enormous progress in this. You have to work very hard to make a bucket public in the console now. But your LLM of choice, whatever it happens to be, will probably spit some Terraform out for you or whatever that will do all of those things and disable all those controls, and you don't actually know what's going on because you don't know what the code's doing, you're not familiar with it, and there's no kind of mechanism to kick it back to say, you absolutely need to put this little flag on, or if you then go and look at it in the console, go, this is public. You really sure you want to do that? Be on like a little sort of tag. So providers need to do better. And as a community, we need to do better at educating people on why you shouldn't be making these things public.
Ihan, thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that's it's like the hacking thing. You see this every couple of weeks or every couple of months that someone's opened the bucket or someone's completely forgot that it was even open. They kind of need almost like I mean, AWS has done really well with the default settings and control over the account, being able to kind of set kind of account wide settings. It might be nice if they had some kind of like an org view of things. I don't know if Macy does that. Macy's quite good at giving this kind of information. I feel like all of these providers, AWS, GCP, Azure, whatever it is, they kind of need like a centralized console of saying, it's happened so many times now. It's like, okay, yeah, these are your publicly accessible resources in your organization. Are you sure you want to keep them accessible? It's all about the visibility, really. It's like with the one that we spoke about before with Inspector. It's just visibility. Make these providers making it easier for people to catch things, because it's really easy to make a mistake, especially when you're vibe coding. Like John said, something gives you back something and you don't go into the console because you're doing it via a CLI or you're doing it via a pipeline or whatever it is. I guess that's when it's important when you've got things like SonarQube or other tools to scan your IAC that you're deploying. So that kind of comes back to that as well. But yeah, just from the providers, it would be good to have something that's like a publicly accessible, not publicly accessible resources that maybe you should watch out for. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. Also, they're talking about environment credentials as well. Who stores environment credentials in S3 objects? What's going on? Yeah.
And source code. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was quite interesting that according to this article, and according to the tool that's doing the detection, the number of exposed cloud storage buckets is more than 30% higher than it was at the same time the previous year. Do you think that's detection is getting better, or do you think that's the problem's actually getting worse, despite all the measures that the providers have put in place?
I don't know. I think it's like people see other companies make these mistakes and they think, oh, maybe we should put some security controls in place. Maybe. I don't know.
I think it's some and some. I think it's some and some. It's never going to be one or the other. Detection will be getting better, but it's not hard to work out what buckets have been made public. And that's what I'm assuming, because they just say misconfigured rather than public, because public might be genuinely public for a reason. You should never have them public. Use CloudFront, for crying out loud. But
well, you should never have public buckets unless you want to have your logo in AWS Marketplace. And then the only way to get your logo onto your AWS Marketplace listing is to put it in a public bucket. So, if you have an organization that has a service control policy which prevents you from having public buckets, if you want to get onto Marketplace, you need to speak to your administrator to override the service control policy so you can get your logo onto AWS Marketplace, which seems crazy. Come on, AWS Marketplace team. It's got to be another way to get my logo into my Marketplace listing.
Yeah, I would be that admin. Yeah, I think it's some and some, because it's not hard to work out what buckets are public, but it's probably hard to work out whether they're public on purpose. And I think the problem is getting worse because of the vibe coders. And I don't blame them for it. I don't, genuinely, because you don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we don't know what we don't know, and we have reached the end of our time for season 4, episode 21 of Logicast. That we do know. So just remains for me to thank you, John, as always, for your insights. Thank you, Ihan, for joining us and sharing your insights. It's been great to have you on. Look forward to see you again next week at the AWS User Group, where John will be delivering his talk on the AI serverless podcast workflow. I forget the title of it, but something along those lines. So if you're still listening, thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed it, tell your friends. We are available from wherever you download your podcasts, and we are also available on YouTube if you'd like to see the faces we're pulling when we're talking to you and talking about things like electric shocks, etc. So check out our YouTube channel and go head over there, subscribe for regular weekly updates. There we go. Definitely not starting again now, because
you're thinking about plumbing, mate.
So it's, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Something's wet.
But that genuinely is all we have time for. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode for you. See you again next time.